Now I want to turn our attention to what took place inside the court and what we might expect in the days and months to come. Joining me now to talk about today's oral arguments, we're going to be joined by Sherif Girgis. He is Associate Professor of Law at Notre Dame Law School. He served as a law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. We're going to be joined by him in just a moment. I think some very interesting aspects of the arguments that were taking place within the Supreme Court today. My sense in looking, I'm going to ask Sherif this, but in my sense in listening to this is that those on the court, on the left side of the court, are struggling to try to somehow bolster Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the two decisions that uphold abortion on demand in this country. The reason I say that, and we now have the professor. I'll go to this clip in just a moment. Professor, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Sherif, let me just ask you this. What did you think about today's oral arguments?
Well, I thought there were a lot of people who at 9:59 would have told you that there's no chance that the court overturns Roe v. Wade, who by the end of the argument would have told you that's probably the most likely outcome. The main reason is that Justice Kavanaugh is widely seen as the swing vote, and Justice Kavanaugh at every turn was suggesting that he thinks this is an issue that under the Constitution belongs to the states. The only middle ground that was discussed was by the Chief Justice, but nobody seemed to take it, and the lawyers on both sides seemed to think it was unworkable.
It did seem that there was very little from the left, other than trying to, those on the left side of the court, if you will, the liberal side, to, stare decisis is one of the points. The Chief Justice made reference to that too. But it seemed like Justice Sotomayor was the one who was doing most of the talking, at least when the Mississippi was making its case. And quite frankly, I think she was reaching. One of the arguments that she used to, I don't want to play this clip if we can real quick. It was, let me see if I have it. Clip number 4, please. Play clip 4.
I'm not trying to argue that we should overturn those cases. I just think you're dissimulating when you say that any ruling here wouldn't have an effect on those.
Respectfully,
Do you think that no state is going to think otherwise? That no people in the population aren't going to challenge those cases in court?
And she was making reference, Sherif, to Griswold, Lawrence, Obergefell, literally trying to tie Roe to those cases, saying, well, look, if we overturn Roe, we could lose all of these as well.
Yeah, I don't think that went anywhere, and I don't think it will go anywhere for a couple of reasons. But probably the most important one is that there's just no serious opposition from the states to those much more settled precedents. Whether they were rightly or wrongly decided in the first place, you don't see states passing laws that are trying to challenge the Griswold's rule that married couples have access to contraceptives. You don't see them even challenging Obergefell's rule that same-sex marriage has to be recognized. You certainly don't see them trying to pass anti-sodomy statutes that would challenge Lawrence versus Texas. So whereas Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey are every bit as contested as they were when they were handed down, if not more so. So there's no real comparison between the two.
Yeah, and that point has kind of come across, that this has politicized the court probably more than anything, because they reached in and they grabbed this from the American people and did not allow the democratic process to reach consensus on this. And this seemed to be, and this was some of the questioning and comments made today, that there is a recognition that that's what the court did.
Yeah, I think that's a point that's especially powerful with Justice Kavanaugh. He seems to say at several points that, look, these are difficult issues, There are real competing interests on both sides. There are fair-minded people of goodwill on both sides who take a different position on what the law should be. And because it's so complicated, and because there are so many difficult moral questions at stake, and so many different ways to respond to those moral concerns, to meet the needs of women, as well as protect unborn life, that this is not something that the courts are fitted to handle. And this is something that's much better suited to the political branches, and that, as a matter of fact, our Constitution leaves it to the political branches and to the states rather than the courts.
What did you make of the conversation about science? Justice Sotomayor trying to be dismissive of the arguments that children in utero feel pain, equating that to dead people who react to stimuli. I mean, again, are they reaching to try to uphold Roe?
You know, it's interesting. It wasn't entirely clear to me exactly where she was trying to go with that line of argument. One reaction I had to it is that most pro-choice advocates today, and certainly most philosophers who argue for abortion rights or abortion access, anything like that, would tell you, well, of course, that from conception onward, what you have is a human being in the sense of a whole and complete member of the species Homo sapiens. The same thing that you have at the teenage stage and at the elderly stage is what you have at the zygote, embryo, and fetal stage. And they just disagree about the moral worth of the human being at different stages. She, at some point, seemed to be veering in the direction of challenging even that scientific consensus that this is exactly the same organism. And that would seem like an unusual tack to take. It's certainly not the tack that any serious pro-choice scholars that I'm aware of today would take, because it's just a matter of science that it's a human organism from conception. And it seemed an especially unproductive way to try to push this constitutional argument along.
Right.
And I guess one thing that was striking to me is that Justice Kagan, who is normally the most incisive, one of the most incisive questioners at oral arguments, seems to say almost nothing.
Sherif, we're out of time. Got to leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.